Welcome to Movie Galaxy. A woman witnesses the horrific moment her husband is murdered by a gangster. Afterward, the gang turns on her, believing they've killed her too. They dig a large hole and throw both bodies in, assuming she's dead. What they don't realize is that she's still alive. Buried and filled with rage, she waits for the right moment to strike back, determined to avenge her husband and make the gang pay. Brenner, a highly trained soldier, is married to Dylan, a policeman. They are driving to a vacation spot when a man in a truck passes by, makes rude comments about Brenner, and cuts them off. Later, they stop at a restaurant. While Dylan goes to the restroom, Brenner sits at a table alone. The same man from the truck, named Butch, shows up and starts bothering her, getting too close. Butch is a bully and talks rudely to her. Dylan comes out of the bathroom, and they argue. Before things get worse, an elderly woman from the restaurant steps in and pulls them apart. She tells the couple that people in the town aren't used to seeing such a nice pair and apologizes for Butch's behavior. Dylan thanks the elderly lady, but she insists that he call her mom, as everyone does. After eating at the restaurant, the couple keeps driving and finds a good spot in the forest to camp for the night. As they settle in, a female police officer shows up and starts talking to Brenner. She warns them that the locals are a bit strange and not very friendly to outsiders, so they should be careful if they plan to camp there. Grateful for the advice, they decide to go hiking after the cop leaves. While walking, Dylan asks Brenner if they should go left or right. Brenner says to go left, and as they head that way, it starts to rain. They soon come across a cabin and decide to go inside to wait out the rain. Enjoying the romantic atmosphere, the couple shares a special moment inside the cabin. Afterward, Brenner starts exploring the cabin. In another room, she finds a hidden compartment and, to her horror, discovers a large stash of ammunition. Panicked, she quickly calls Dylan to check outside. He's also scared, and they both decide it's best to leave at that moment. Just as Brenner and Dylan are about to leave, Butch sneaks up behind them and hits them with his gun on the head, knocking them unconscious. When they wake up, they find themselves tied up in a room, with Butch cruelly tormenting Dylan while forcing Brenner to watch, adding to her emotional pain. As the torture continues, one of Butch's men rushes and takes him outside, informing him that Dylan is a police officer. This makes Butch panic for a moment. He goes back to the room, apologizes to Dylan for what he has done, then suddenly shoots both of them. Butch orders his men to get rid of the bodies. They dig a large hole, bury the couple, and leave. The movie flashes back to show Brenner during her intense officer training, revealing that she is no ordinary woman but a highly skilled and elite soldier. The scene then returns to the present, where Brenner wakes up after everyone has left. The bullets didn't kill her, only grazing her and causing her to bleed. She quickly checks on Dylan, but he is already dead. Overwhelmed, she covers his body with branches, mourning her loss. She goes back to their campsite blaming herself for his death, especially because she was the one who suggested they go left. She remembers her true strength and identity. Filled with rage, she vows to take revenge on those responsible. Grabbing an axe, she goes into the woods to hunt them down. Meanwhile, Butch returns to Mom's house, where he and his gang bully a woman. Butch grabs her from behind and forces a kiss on her, showing his total disregard for her will. The locals live in fear of Butch and his group, who have been kidnapping women and doing whatever they please. At that moment, Mom steps in, telling Butch to eat quickly because she has another job for him. Meanwhile, Brenner is busy crafting a sharp weapon out of wood. She uses it to kill one of Butch's men, but it's clear that she takes no pleasure in the violence. After disposing of the body, she vanishes into the woods. Sometime later, she takes down another man and chops off a third man's foot. But instead of finishing him off, she watches as he crawls away, barely escaping with his life. Brenner then sets fire to Butch's important cabin, causing a massive explosion. This grabs the attention of Sheriff Hobbs, who hears the blast, draws his gun, and tries to figure out what caused it. At the same time, Mom and Butch also hear the explosion. Butch sees smoke rising from the direction of his cabin and becomes uneasy. Mom orders him to check it out. As Butch heads into the forest, he finds one of his wounded men who had been attacked by Brenner. Panicked, Butch helps his injured friend into the truck and quickly drives away. We then see Brenner lying hidden in the back of Butch's truck as he returns to Mom's house. When Butch tells Mom the bad news, that some of their people have been killed, she is furious. She lashes out at him, even slapping him for getting them into this mess, and orders him to find the outsiders responsible. It becomes clear that Mom runs a well-organized network, with a lot of control and resources at her disposal. Mom goes to one of her tech experts and instructs him to look into Breener's background. When the man pulls up her profile, Mom is shocked to learn that Breener is not just an ordinary woman, but a highly trained military operative. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hobbs, while walking through the forest, finds the body of one of Butch's men. He immediately contacts the command center to report the discovery. Breener, on the other hand, has been busy setting traps throughout the forest, preparing for anyone who might come after her. As Hobbs' men arrive at the scene, one of them tells the sheriff that the body belonged to one of Mom's people. He explains that Mom controls the entire forest. Everyone around calls her Mama, and everything that happens there is under her command. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Sheriff Hobbs decides he needs to meet Mom immediately. At the same time, a woman working in the command center informs Mom that Sheriff Hobbs is on his way to see her. It turns out this woman is also secretly working for Mom. The sheriff and some of his men go to meet Mom and inform her about the bodies they found in the forest. Instead of admitting that her people were in trouble, Mom claims that the man they found had committed suicide, making up a story to cover the truth. The sheriff knows she's lying but doesn't challenge her and leaves with his men. That night, Mom and her group mourn the loss of their friend. They drink heavily and fall asleep. Butch wakes up and goes into the garage, only to find Breener waiting for him. Without hesitation, she slashes his throat, avenging her husband, and watches as Butch struggles to breathe before dying. The following morning, Breener remains hidden in the house. She witnesses one of Mom's men dragging a girl into a room and locking her inside. To her horror, Breener realizes that the girl isn't alone. There are many other girls imprisoned there. Feeling compassion for them, Breener decides to help them escape. She sneaks into the room and manages to free the girls, but they are too terrified to leave. One of them panics and screams, alerting a gunman, who begins shooting, and one of the girls is tragically killed. Breener, with her incredible combat skills, quickly takes out the gunman in a unique and skillful way. Breener heads into the forest with a girl named Emily. Meanwhile, Mom finds out that Butch is dead and that all the captive girls have escaped. Devastated by the death of her son, Mom gets very angry and orders her men to hunt down Breener. She tells them to gather all the men and dogs and search the forest to bring Breener in. One of Mom's men finds Breener's hiding spot, but he falls victim to a trap she had set. Another man shows up, but Breener quickly shoots him dead. Later that night, Breener and Emily sit together, talking. Emily tells her that she is pregnant but admits she's terrified of dying, fearing what Mom might do if she catches her. Breener reassures Emily that she will protect her. Meanwhile, Mom sends her top enforcer, a man known as Hunk, into the forest with his dogs to track down Breener. The following morning, Hunk's men capture Emily, but Breener arrives just in time and takes them out. Around the same moment, Sheriff Hobbs shows up in the forest. One of Mom's men shoots Hobbs in the leg, but Breener quickly spots the shooter and kills him. Breener and Emily help Hobbs get to a safe place. Breener explains to Sheriff Hobbs that they need to create a distraction. Otherwise, Mom's people will keep finding them, making it harder to survive. They decide it's time to leave their current hideout and move to a safer location. Emily and Breener continue moving along the stream, eventually coming across the same female police officer who had warned Breener and her husband about the area. Desperate, they seek her help, and she tells them to get in the car. Exhausted, Emily and Breener fall asleep in the back seat. When they wake up, they find themselves surrounded by Mom and her men. It turns out the female police officer had been working for Mom all along, secretly on her payroll. They begin torturing Emily and Breener. In desperation, Emily tells Mom that she is pregnant with Butch's child. Hearing this, Mom orders her men to take Emily to another room. Meanwhile, Breener is tied up in a separate room, prepared for torture. However, Emily manages to bring in some food and eliminates the guard watching over Breener. She quickly unties Breener, and they both spring into action. Breener storms into the room where all of Mom's men are, and a brutal fight breaks out. One by one, Breener takes them down with her combat skills. At the same time, Mom holds a knife to Emily's throat, threatening to kill her unless Breener drops her weapon. In the heat of the moment, one of Mom's men attacks Breener from behind, and in the chaos, Mom slits Emily's throat before escaping. Breener ends the attacker, but when she rushes to Emily, it's too late. The young girl is already dead. The scene then shifts to 3 months later. Mom is sitting quietly in a garden when she receives a message. Judgment Day. Just as she reads it, she is shot in the head. The camera reveals Brenner, camouflaged in the forest, finally avenging her husband and Emily. With her mission complete, Brenner walks away, and with that, the movie concludes. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe so as to watch our latest uploads.